Hello and welcome back. My name is Dr. Christopher Gennari, and this is the Great Big History Podcast. Our continuing series of 10 questions. We have reached Persia, Achaemenid Persia, war and roads at the edge of the world. So where is Persia located? You've probably noticed a theme. We start with geography. We always try to locate the place and what its relationship is to its neighbors. And we start with Persia, or Persis, Persis. The province is far to the southeast of Mesopotamia. It's kind of unimportant. We haven't talked about it so far. It's kind of the middle of nowhere. There's mountains to the north. There's the Iranian plateau, which the Medes are on. So the Medes are to the north of them, dominating what is today Iran, and the Caucasus Mountains. The Medes will even reach into Asia Minor, into Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey. Babylon is in Mesopotamia. Egypt is on the Nile, well to the west. The Persians are the Medes' little cousins. They're just not that important. So they live in a place that's just not that important. So then, how do they become the largest Mesopotamian empire? An empire that will stretch from Europe and Libya to include all of Asia Minor, all of the Levant, all Egypt, all of Mesopotamia, and then a Iranian Persian state, and then parts of Central Asia, what today would be called Afghanistan, and essentially Pakistan, the Indus River Valley, what was then at the time going to be called India. Oh, it becomes the largest empire on Earth with 25% of the human population in it. How do they start from this little place and become this massive thing? And the answer is Cyrus. Why? Because Cyrus is the man. How do I know he's the man? And you should say that. Just say Cyrus is the man. Go ahead. Just say it. Cyrus is the man. How do we know? Because one, he has a body wash. You can go into Sephora, get the Zur Warrior collection, and you can smell like Cyrus. Well, you actually smell better than Cyrus because you're using soap and bathing. And so, but you can smell like the orange groves, the citrus groves of Mesopotamia. Do you have a body wash? No, you don't. Who has a body wash? Cyrus has a body wash. How else do we know that Cyrus is the man? It's not me. It's not historians saying that. It's people at the time called him the man. He had an origin story. His granddad, the king of the Medes, tried to kill him twice. Actually, 3 times. And failed every time. He tried to kill him in utero. He tried to kill him as a baby. And tried to kill him as a young man. He would eventually raise an army of Persians to fight his granddad, defeat his granddad in battle, and then not kill his granddad. Then he put his granddad in charge of a little province somewhere where he could retire. And then later on, the story is that the granddad got murdered. So whether Cyrus ordered it or not, that's a mystery of history. But he didn't murder him in the battle. 2, he defeated the Lydian cavalry using camel pee and a solar eclipse. He has an origin story. Like Superman has an origin story. Like Batman has an origin story. Cyrus has an origin story. And his origin story is his granddad tried to kill him. And then he has the great victory. The Lydian cavalry was considered the best cavalry in the world. And it comes charging at him in Anatolia. And what Cyrus had realized at some point was that horses, and the Persians are horse people, they're horse nomadic peoples. He realized that horses don't like the smell of camel pee. And so he had his men do is collect barrels of camel pee. Now, how would you like that job? Collect the camel pee. But as the Lydian horses come charging down, these guys with the spears come charging, who are confident, they are wearing armor, not quite the cataphractoi of later, but these heavily armed men, the best cavalry in the world, come charging. The earth is shaking. Right before they hit the Persian lines, they drop the camel pay. The horses freak out. The Lydian horses run away. That's fighting smarter, not harder. His army diverted the Euphrates River to capture Babylon. Diverted an entire river. Like, that's something out of Yellowstone. That's how, like, conniving, smart, but also hardworking that is. He got men. He said, men, you see that river? The greatest river in the whole wide world? Because these men had not yet seen the Nile. And nobody knew the Yangtze River in China existed. He says, you see the greatest river in the whole wide world? And they say, yeah. He's like, make it turn left. And they went, what? He said, make it turn left. And they said, okay. And they did. Thus inundating the Babylonian walls and allowing them to capture the city. He freed the enslaved Hebrews from the Babylonian captivity. He returns the Hebrews to Judea. He helps rebuild Solomon's temple. The temple that Jesus will go Kung Fu Jesus against the money changers in is the version of the temple kind of, it's updated by Herod, so it's called Herod's temple, but it's really the second temple that is rebuilt by Hebrews, don't get me wrong, but it's the money, the stones, the assist, the grant money that went into helping build it is Persian. He is so good to the enslaved Hebrews in helping Judaism essentially survive that he's called a Messiah. He's the only non-Jewish person called a Messiah in the Old Testament. Think about that. Think about how good your PR has to be. A Messiah. Now, what is a Messiah? A Messiah is a person. Now, it means anointed one. So actually, there's lots of things that are Messiah. Things are Messiah, can be a Messiahs. But in terms of people, let's just talk about the proper noun of people. A Messiah is a person sent by the Jewish God to save the Jewish people. Think about that for a second. The Hebrews call Cyrus a Messiah. Isaiah does that. It's right there in the Old Testament, Isaiah 45. Thus says the Lord to his anointed. Anointed, right? That's Messiah. Thus says the Lord to his Messiah. To Cyrus, whom he has taken by his right hand. Now, right hand is the strong hand, right? You are at the right hand of the Father, right? Jesus sits at the right hand of God. If you are in the right hand, you are the person's homeboy. So, Yahweh has taken Cyrus by his right hand to subdue nations before him, to strip the loins of kings, to force gateways before him that their gates be closed no more. That's Babylon, by the way. The gateways, that's Babylon. Just so you know, when Babylon was famous for having like 60-foot tall bronze gates that could not be smashed open. So when you see the gateways will be opened. He's referencing Babylon. I will go before you leveling the heights. That's the mountains. That's the Tarsus Mountains that gets you to Anatolia and to the Lydians. That crosses you over into Asia Minor and the plateau, right? So this is leaving Mesopotamia and going to the land of the old Hittites, going towards Europe. I will go before you leveling the heights. I will shatter the bronze gateways. There we go. Smash the iron bars. I will give you the hidden treasures, the secret hoards, that you may know I am the Lord. And when you see that, you know Yahweh is dropping the mic. The I am the Lord, you may know that I am the Lord. That's why we're like, boom, just mic drops. That is an exclamation period. Done. So, are the Hebrews happy with Cyrus? Yeah. Yes, a lot. So, that's great PR. Now, when we get to the Hebrew section, we're going to talk about the Persians again. We're going to talk about the book of Esther. So if you're sitting there going, I read the book of Esther, and the Persians aren't very nice in that, there's things about that, and we will talk about that when we get to the Hebrew section. But Cyrus is the man. Okay? Everybody likes Cyrus. Why? What is his method of legitimacy? Why would people like Cyrus? Why is he a messiah? Well, he's nice. He's the opposite of the Assyrians. He lets kings stay in charge. His granddad, who tried to kill him, stays in charge. All right, he's not king of the Medes anymore. He's a governor of a local province, but he's still in charge. The king of the Lydians stays king of the Lydians. The king of Babylon stays, for a little while at least, king of Babylon. Cyrus takes on the old name King of Kings. Why? Because there's not a word for emperor. And even emperor in Latin doesn't mean super king. It means general. It means less than a king. Because you have to understand the Romans didn't like kings. So if you're going to call yourself a king, you get murdered like Caesar. So you need another name. So if you call yourself general, people are like, oh, we've seen generals before. So there's not a word for emperor. So Cyrus goes, I'm a king, and I tell other kings what to do, which means I am a king of kings. Yeah. Which, if you're a Christian, you know that that title gets tossed around in the Middle East for a while until it ends up with Jesus. Jesus, the Christians give it to Jesus and say he's the King of Kings. He's the ultimate King of Kings. The idea is that this niceness creates loyalty of the people who are not Persian. You don't get revolts. They're willing to join the Persian army. Even when Alexander comes through, right, destroying the Persian Empire, almost no one revolts against the Persians. That doesn't mean everyone fought for them. A lot of people see Alexander rolling through. The Hebrews do this, and they're like, whoa, 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 we cool. And Alexander's like, well, you're going to fight against me? And they're like, no, 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 we see you're a big winner. We're okay with that. But, you know, the Persians were good to us. So we're not going to help you destroy the Persians. And Alexander's like, well, you're going to sit this out? And they're like, yes. He's like, that's cool. I understand that. You've taken loyalty oaths. They're your homeboys. They treated you well. I totally understand that loyalty. But after I defeat the Persians, are we cool? And the Hebrews say, yeah, we're totally cool. So it doesn't mean that they always are going to, like, fervently become Persian. Nobody does. Or almost nobody does, right? They don't become Persian. But they're not also willing to go against their vows. They're not willing to sell out the Persians later on. Now, it gets a little complicated. You know, there aren't necessarily rebellions as there is a lot of people. This is later on. Cyrus is dead 200 years. This is after the wars with the Greeks. But before Alexander, there's a lot of infighting between, like, who's going to be king, and brothers are murdering brothers. And at that point, you get a bunch of governors who are like, what if I just don't return their calls? Let's see what happens. So there's not so much rebellion and revolt. There's no French Revolution in the Persian Empire that breaks it apart. There's more like people like the Persians, but, you know, they're kind of ghosting them at the same time. They're kind of like, I'll get back to you later, and we'll see what happens. So, but that's not in Cyrus's day. In Cyrus's day, people like Cyrus. All right, well, Cyrus dies, and his son, Cambyses, takes over. Okay, so what's Cambyses' method of legitimacy? He's a young man. He wants to be like dad. His dad is the most popular man in the world. His dad has conquered most of the world. You know, when they open up the maps, when Cambyses opens up the maps, he goes, well, I want to be a great conqueror just like dad. I'm gonna be like dad. Yeah, I'm gonna be like dad. What did my dad not conquer? And you open up the map, and there's only one place, Egypt. Not much, except it's the wealthiest, oldest civilization on Earth. Okay. So it's not a bad get. If you only had one place to conquer, Egypt is the place, right? So he gets his army together. He gets the Phoenicians to get him a navy. He uses the Hebrews, who know the paths across the desert, rolls into Egypt, right? Does he act nice? No. He uses Assyrian-style violence. He's Cambyses is Cyrus's son, and he wants to be like dad. Only Egypt was left to conquer, and he does it. He conquers Egypt. But he kills the fatted bull Apis. Now, there's This is Herodotus saying he killed the fatted bull, Apis. There are historians who say that never happened. But Herodotus needed a reason why the Egyptians hate Cambyses so much and hate the Persians, while everyone else loves Cyrus. And the idea is kind of, Herodotus' answer is Cambyses kind of has a nervous breakdown. He can't understand how Egypt could be so wealthy and so successful and worship a cow. And they're like, no, man, it's not a cow. It's a representation. It's a symbol of royal strength. It's a symbol of plenty. It's a symbol of our relationship between our pharaohs and our gods. Man, it's all like metaphor. And Cambyses is like, no, it's a cow. You're worshiping a cow. Right? This is the golden calf. This is the same golden calf. If you know your Moses story, when Moses goes up the mountain and the Hebrews are like, he's been gone too long, maybe Yahweh ain't all that in a bag of chips. We better get another God to help us out. They make a golden calf. That's Apis. Right? So he kills the fatted bull, Apis, and then has a barbecue. Well, you can understand why the Egyptians are looking at him going, you're murdering our metaphor. And they're not going to be happy about that. Then he loses an army in the Libyan desert. This is the thing that seems to have set him off on his nervous breakdown. He sends out an army somewhere between 20 and 50,000. The numbers are all over the place. But it's an army to conquer Libya, to go out to a great oasis, a religious oasis, and conquer Libya. And everyone's thought is they got trapped in a sandstorm. The thing is that army has never been found. 20, 30,000 men, 50,000 men go out off into the desert, and there's nothing. You find nothing. Not Persian coins, not bones, just nothing. It's like Roanoke. It's like one of those great mysteries of history. They just disappear. They walked off over the horizon, and they disappear completely from history, archaeology. They're just gone. Well, if you lose an army in the desert and you're being mean to people, the people you're being mean to are not going to take you too militarily seriously. And so Egypt revolts. Which leads to more violence to put down the revolt, which means if you're watching the video, there's Cambyses being mean to the Egyptian king and other people he's got in collars, slaves, carting them off. They murder people, and they do like Assyrian-style stuff. Like they cut off people's feet and they throw them into the Nile River. Like stuff like that. And so the Egyptians hate the Persians. So the one part of the Persian Empire that's not conquered kind of by niceness is the one part that always, 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 always will revolt if anything bad happens to the Persians. The Egyptians hate the Persians. And so we can kind of see that Assyrian methodology of terrorism and violence continues not to breed loyalty. Cambyses dies. He's a young man, he doesn't have children, and he dies. Now, this ancient sources completely agree he is not murdered, which is interesting, because you would think if you have a mad king murdering people that you might have him murdered. But apparently there is a bit of a little revolt that happens, or there's like, people aren't so happy because he's spending so much time in Egypt being a murdering crazy person, or angry person. I don't want to say crazy person. He's an angry guy. That there's restlessness back in Persia. He goes to go back and put that restlessness down, and he has an accident, whether he's like slips and falls off his horse, he stabs himself and gets infected. He has an accident and he dies. He gets sick and he dies. Well, he doesn't have a son, so who comes next? And 6 guys, or 8 guys, or 10 guys, I think it's 6 though, say, we could do it. We could do it together. A council. We'll have a council. We'll run it together. Right? It's a big empire. We'll divide it up among ourselves. It'll be cool. We don't need a super king. We're all homeboys. We can do it. Well, we've seen this before. This is what happens after Lenin dies, right? This is what happens. What empire has the council? Well, we see this after Diocletian. When he retires, there's the four guys who are all going to run the empire together. That doesn't work. And what happens is they essentially murder each other. And the guy who comes out, the guy who wins, the guy who murders the rest of them, is Darius. I'm an American, so I pronounce it Darius. My friends in England pronounce it Darius. So Darius. What's his method of legitimacy? Now, Darius is not, he's a relation to Cyrus, but he's not his son. And that's huge, because it means he doesn't have to act like Cyrus. He's not bound by people going, well, what, you know what your dad did? Your dad conquered everybody. What are you going to do? He's not bound by that. But he's got enough kinship that when he shows up and he goes, hey, Cyrus was my awesome godfather uncle. People are like, yeah, that's cool. You know, he's not a total stranger to all this, is the idea. His answer is to build big things and have more conquests and to be nice. Now, why build big things? Well, for the first 25, 30 years, people, Cyrus and Cambyses, have been conquering an empire, but not running it. They've been using their army to conquer stuff. Well, there's nothing holding it together. And so Darius is like, well, I'll build things to pull it together. I'll build the threads, the ties that bind. But I'm also a Persian king, so I got to conquer some people. But I'm going to be nice about it, and they're going to be cool. And we're going to show off the first big thing we're going to build is a capital city, Persepolis. And again, we're back to the same thing. Why in Mesopotamia do you have to build a giant capital city? And like the Assyrians built Nineveh, why? Because you live in a world with Babylon. And if you want to be taken seriously as a settled people, you got to have a major city. Now, Cyrus, people come to Cyrus and go, look, there's Babylon. Shouldn't we live in a city? Look how cool Babylon is. And Cyrus is like, well, we conquered Babylon. You want to end up like them? You know, hard land makes hard men. Like, live in your tents and we'll conquer the world. But Cyrus is dead. Cambyses is dead. The people who were with Cyrus are old men. And the new generation is like, dude, I want to sleep on a feathered mattress with peacock feather pillows, whatever it is. I want the nice things in life. We conquered an empire. Why can't I enjoy it? And so they build Persepolis, which is literally the city of the Persians. That's what it means. That's the Greek name for it. But here's the difference between Nineveh and Persepolis. And again, the difference between Assyria and Persia. The Assyrians forced people to build their city. They made people. The building of their city, the building of Nineveh, was a statement. Look what I can do to you. Persepolis, the Persians hire the best and the brightest. They pay people from all over. They're going to pay people from India. They're going to pay people from Greece. They're going to pay people the best and the brightest. Oh, the people from Phoenicia are excellent wood furniture makers. Bring them in. And whatever they want to charge, I'll pay double. Right? This is like the building of the pyramids. You paid people so that they liked you when they went away. They also hung out together. So suddenly Indians are hanging out with Greeks who are hanging out with Egyptians. And what's the first thing they're going to ask each other? Where are you from? Oh, I'm from over there. 3,000 miles that way. Where are you from? And they're like, well, I'm 3,000 miles the other way. And then they look at each other and go, wait, the Persians own everything in between? That's crazy. They must be powerful. And look at how much they're paying me. Must be rich, right? So Darius, the building of Persepolis was to bring people together, but also to show off power and wealth, to convince people that the Persians were wealthy, powerful, and of course, nice. He's going to conquer the Indus River and southeastern Europe, the area north of Greece. He doesn't conquer Greece, but the area north of Greece. And then they're going to build a highway system. Now, this is an information, not trade network. The Romans will build a highway road system for trade, for the moving of armies. Darius's highway is more like the internet, the early internet, where it was a way for military bases and universities to communicate with each other. Above the New York post office used to be. I hope it's still there. I haven't seen the new building. I hope it's still there. It's now Penn Station, a new Penn Station entrance and exit. The Moynihan entrance and exit. Moynihan Station. Above it is the old refrain from Herodotus. Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from their swift completion of their appointed rounds. This is a kind of unofficial post office, postal employees kind of. There are things on Google. If you Google it, they'll say this is not the unofficial motto of the post office. Rah, 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 rah. But it kind of is. It's like, dude, if it's snowing and it's raining, my post person comes. That's why I give them the tip at the end of the year. It's like, because no matter how terrible the weather is, they show up. That attitude literally is carved in marble, going all the way back to Herodotus' discussion of the highway system of the Persians. That the idea was information was constantly coming to Persepolis, which is, remember, in the middle of nowhere. It's not Babylon. It's not on the Nile. It's nowhere near major places of civilization. So he has to bring in this information. But what that allowed was the Persian king to be respected, feared, and most importantly, knew more about his empire than any previous ruler. Darius knew who was wanting to rebel. He knew what was going on in the far edges of his empire before anybody else could know and react. So he knows when the Greeks of Ionia rebel. They thought they had 5 years. They thought they were going to get 5 years, and maybe because they're on the edge of the world, Darius is so far away, he'll kind of just let them go. Like, it's too far, and the Greeks are too poor, and he'll just let them go. Darius shows up 18 months later. Not 5 years. 18 months with the full army. The Greeks were like, whoa, dude, how'd you do that? And he's like, highway system, man. So how are the Persians going to hold this empire together? Niceness doesn't hold it together. Niceness makes people like you, but it's not the glue that holds things together. What holds it together is the imperial army. It's the army that's going to hold it together. And it's imperial. It's not national. The Assyrian Empire was more national. Like, Assyrians were in the army. Maybe some other people, but it was mostly Assyrians. The Persian army, on the other hand, is mostly non-Persians. Anyone can join, which meant it was huge. It had 250,000 troops at its full size. That is 10 times the size of other armies until the Napoleonic age 2,000 years later. When I do my dissertation about the Swedes in the 1650s, the largest army that is assembled is something like 25,000 troops. Why? Because that's as big as you can feed. 25, 30,000 troops is what you could feed. You could feed, they can get enough water, they can get enough supplies, and that the diseases didn't just kill everybody. 250,000 people is Babylon on the move. There's nothing like it in the ancient world. It's just nothing. So what is the advantage? Well, the advantage is diversity. We've already talked about this with Babylon. You bring people from all over the world, you bring them in as not quite equals, but close to equals, and you get diversity. Everyone fights in their home style. And so if you're taking a look at the video, you've got infantrymen, you've got horsemen, you've got African or Indian elephants, you've got rhinoceroses with like giant laser cannons on it. Everyone fights in a style they know how to fight in, so they're all experts. So if you need to fight a cavalry battle, you have experts in cavalry. Remember, the Persians they're good, right? The Persians are excellent horsemen, but they also have to conquer the Lydians and be nice to them, have the Lydian cavalry. So you have the number 1 and the number 2 cavalry army in the world. Okay, how are you going to defeat that? Oh, wait, we have a Persian infantry, and we have a Babylonian infantry. Oh, and we have the Egyptian navy, and like it's impossible to defend against. You are constantly fighting experts in a field of their expertise. Oh, you want to go hide in the mountains? We have mountaineers. We have guys who know how to fight in the mountains. Oh, you want to fight in the desert? You want to run away to the desert? Oh, we have desert nomads who can do that too. Oh, you want to hide in your city? Perfect. Like we have all the siege engines from Mesopotamia. No problem. You want to stand in a big box? We have elephants who will run you over. Right? It's impossible to defend against. And it's so big, it's just easier to surrender, which is usually what the Persians do. They show up, the Persian king shows up and goes, we can fight. You could just surrender and I'll move on. So most people surrender. They say, sure, you're in charge. How am I going to defeat this giant army? I have 3,000 troops, you have 250,000. No, that's not going to happen. What is a disadvantage of the Persian army? So this army is so huge. It's so diverse. It's got experts in all kinds of methods of fighting. What could possibly be a disadvantage? Diversity. It's diversity. There's no common training. There's no common style of fighting. There's no common languages. So unlike the Assyrians, who because they were all mostly Assyrian, could do things nobody else could do. They could do combined arm training. They could do combined arm tactics. The Persians can't. They're more like 15 little armies acting alone. If you watch the movie The 300, the archers and the cavalry and the rhinoceroses don't work together. It's one after another after another. So what did the Spartans do? They just kind of put their shields up and wait. Oh, we'll fight you. Because it's one wave after another wave after another wave. They're different waves, but it's a wave. They're not working together. The Assyrians would hit you by 3 different methods all at the same time. So the Persians' army, diversity is an advantage. It's also a weakness. It's 15 little armies acting alone, all with their own languages, all with their own styles that are not combined. So instead of one big army of 250,000, you're fighting 15 little armies of 15,000 each. It's also so big, it's impossible to feed and impossible for a king to general. A king at best says, forward. That's Xerxes at Salamis. Xerxes at Salamis has no control of the battle. He goes up to Mount Egalius. They put his golden throne on the mountain, and he watches. He's a spectator. He's got luxury box seats. He's at the top of the link. He has no role whatsoever in what happens in the battle because the army is just too big. It can't be commanded. So at best, it's forward, and the different people do what they do. So there's a lot of trust in local foreign groups to, 1, fight well, and 2, not run away. So what happens to the Persian Empire? For 300 years, they are the greatest empire. Unlimited manpower, unlimited money, unlimited supplies of everything. They own Asia Minor. They own Egypt. They own the Levant. They own Mesopotamia. They own Iran. They own Western Central Asia, Afghanistan. And they own what is today Pakistan, the Indus River Valley. What was then by the Europeans and the Middle Eastern peoples known as India, what they considered to be India, named after the Indus. How could the Persians possibly lose? And yet we know they did because we don't speak Persian. Well, they suffered defeats against the Greeks. The defeat versus Athens at Marathon in 490 BCE, and then a defeat against all the Greeks, or not all of them, but 13 major cities during its full invasion, Xerxes' full invasion in 480, 10 years later. So the Greeks do something nobody else has done. They defeat the Persians twice. And in fact, the Athenians really claim to be the ones defeating them twice. At Marathon, it's them and the Plataeans. And the defeat of the Persians at Salamis is, well, lots of different navies, and technically, as Spartan is in charge, it's the Athenian navy that is the big reason they win. And so the Athenians, little dinky Athens, can claim that they did something the Lydians, the Egyptians, the Medes, and the Babylonians couldn't do, and that's defeat the Persians. Well, if dinky little Athens can do it, well, the Egyptians go, well, we're revolting. We don't want this. If Athens can win, then we can win. And so Egypt revolts, right? And when that happens, there begins to be problems in the royal family. There's royal civil wars. If there's less legitimacy, there's less people who say, oh, that king is doing a good job. And there's more people who go, maybe I could do a better job. Why should he be king? And, ordinary people can't say that, but people in the royal family can. A younger brother can. A brother-in-law could. They're close to power, and they're like, if I just murder the king, who no one really likes anyway, maybe I could be in charge. The best example of this is Cyrus the Younger. Not Cyrus the Great, not Cyrus the Man. Cyrus the Younger. This is after the Peloponnesian War. He was a governor in what is essentially Lydia, and he knows he's the younger brother of the king, and he knows one day, sooner or later, a hitman is going to come and kill him. So what he does is he hires a whole bunch of Greeks who have just finished fighting each other. But they're unemployed, they have no jobs, and so he's like, hey, how about I hire you and you come work for me? And plenty of Greeks are like, well, you're the enemy, but you pay well, so we'll work for you. And he's like, okay, great. Do you like me? And they're like, we like you. He's like, how about we march into Persia and murder my brother? The Greeks go, why would we do that? Well, sooner or later, my brother's going to send a hitman to kill me, and then you don't get paid. If we win, I become king of Persia, you get all the money. You get a lot of money because you're my homeboys. And the Greeks, who, remember, had just finished murdering each other in the Peloponnesian War and are essentially unemployed, are like, we get a lot of money? Cool. We're in. And that's the story of Xenophon's Anabasis, and we're going to talk about that later. But the march, Cyrus the Younger is willing to hire Greeks, the enemy, to march in to fight his own brother in a royal civil war. When the royal family is murdering each other, provinces stop listening. They ghost you. They don't return your calls. You send a letter, nothing comes back. Which means kings have to start to use violence, which means a loss of even more legitimacy. So the Egyptian revolts get even bigger, which means you have to be more violent to put them down. More places aren't listening, which means you have to send an army to be like, hey, I'm telling you what to do, right? You have more and more conflict because there's less and less legitimacy. Less and less people are willing to accept your right to tell them what to do, which means you have to force them. And people don't like being forced to do things. They react to that. So in the 320s, Alexander, at the head of a Macedonian army with a lot of Greek mercenaries, or Greek allies, comes rolling in, and it leads to the total destruction of the Persian Empire. He happens to be fighting Darius III, who turns out to be a weak king. He's a nice guy. Everybody says he's a nice guy. He's well-liked. But he's fighting Alexander, maybe one of the best generals to have ever lived, and he's a bit of a coward. He runs away. He is not Cyrus. Had Alexander invaded Persia during Cyrus's reign, Cyrus would have crushed him. He would have used his superior army to suck him into the wastes of Asia, bring him into a desert, and just crush him. Cyrus would have used his advantages and would have used Alexander's disadvantage, which was his confidence, which is in so many ways an advantage, but it also gets him into trouble a lot. Like, Alexander nearly dies like 3, 4, 5 times. He nearly gets killed in his first battle at the Granicus. A Persian guy is about to cleave open his head with an axe when Clitus the Black, a guy who will show up later, stabs him. Stabs the guy and saves Alexander. So we almost didn't have Alexander. We had Alexander the Who, not Alexander the Great. But that was the idea. It just happens that Darius III cared more about himself than going down fighting. And so every time he fled, he lost legitimacy, but it meant the other people weren't willing to fight. If the Persians aren't willing to fight, if the Persian king is not willing to fight to protect his own throne, why would anyone else fight? And so the army would just stop fighting Alexander. Just be like, whoa, we're done. We're going home. And Alex was smart enough to be like, okay, cool. I'm not here to fight you. I'm just here to defeat the Persians. So Alexander's invasion is a total destruction of the Persian Empire. So what's the consequence of this? What's the result of this? Well, it's the replacement of Mesopotamian culture with Greek culture. From Egypt to Afghanistan, which was then called Bactria, it becomes part of Europe. You have men in togas listening to Greek plays in a Greek theater in Afghanistan. Afghanistan was part of Europe. Egypt was European. The Middle East was Greek-speaking, and it was European. At least the elites were Greek-speaking. It was part of Europe. We also get, so Mesopotamian culture, which had existed from the beginning of this course, gets wiped out. It dies. There's only two Semitic languages left, Hebrew and Arabic. Why are they around? Because not only are the people successful, but because the religions were successful, the culture was successful. But you don't get Aramaic. That's gone. You don't get the Assyrians. They're gone. The Assyrian languages, they're gone. So Mesopotamian culture, the culture of Gilgamesh, the culture of cuneiform, is replaced with Greek culture and a Greek way of thinking, Greek philosophy, Greek plays, Greek culture, a Greek dress, Greek hairstyles, right? Alexander's clean-shaven. People after him become clean-shaven. But you also get the start of quote-unquote white ethno-superiority. Now, we need a note here. We need an asterisk, and that's why the white is in quotation marks, because the ancient world was not racist. It did not have colorism. It did not say your value is based on the color of your skin. It said your value is based on your culture. So either you're Greek or you're not. If you're not Greek, but if you are Greek, great. And that who gets to be Greek was very fluid. It's kind of, as long as you act Greek, you could become Greek. So you could marry in, you could work for, you could just like fake it till you make it. But with Alexander's conquest, you do get the idea, the start of the idea, that white people, that Europeans, are better than other people. And we see this in Clitus the Black. Remember, Clitus the Black saved Alexander in the first battle, the Battle of the Granicus, in Asia Minor. It's the first battle Alexander fights in the Persian Empire. And there's a celebration, and they're drinking, and Alexander's drinking parties, and this is true of Philip II too. Macedonian drinking parties are violent affairs. It's like going to an old, ranch pub. You're going to get into a fight sooner or later. Like it's just gonna happen. Clitus the Black is part of the older generation. He knew Alexander's father. He's a generation older. And he asks this question, hey, we've conquered the Persians. Why should we mix with them? Why should we marry Persian women? Why should we hire the Persians to do work for us? Why should we hire the Persians to be governors? Make all the governors Greek. Make all the governors Macedonian. Why should we mix with these losers? Us Europeans are superior. Us Greeks, us Macedonians are better than other people. We won. Why would we mix with these people? Meanwhile, Alexander has a Persian wife. He will later have a Bactrian wife. He will hire Persians as governors and into his army. He loves Egypt. Oh my God. He loves Egypt. He loves being an Egyptian pharaoh. I mean, it is the greatest job in the whole wide world. He loved it. He didn't want to leave Egypt. So he's totally cool with Macedonian and Greek and mixing and this diversity and this kind of new international imperial culture, man. It's going to be great. It's there are no rules and there is no possession, man. and there's no heaven, and there's no hell, and you can have whatever God you want, man. And it's so cool. And you just mix, and you go with the flow. He's cool with mixing cultures. And this is the fight. What's better? An ethno-nationalism? An ethno-separatism? Macedonians with their Greeks who they respect versus everybody else? Or this mixing, this fluidity of culture, of gender, of dress, this kind of like, Clive Black is like, these Persians aren't men. We're men. We act like men. I've got a beard. I do a thing. These guys dress in silks and they're effeminate and they're not real fighters. They wear pants, right? Because they ride horses, so of course they wear pants. But that was seen as like not civilized. Like a toga is a man's outfit, right? It's civilized. So you get this start right from the beginning of European victories comes the idea that the Europeans are somehow better than other people and that they should remain separate from other people, that they shouldn't mix with them. And we're going to see this throughout 101 and especially into 102. Whereas other cultures are perfectly willing to mix, we're going to see European cultures be standoffish about it. Some will mix. Romans are the most important. But the Romans mix by making people Roman. So there's a big asterisk there too. But other people will be completely separate. In the Middle Ages, Spain and England and Germany will all try to kick out the Jews. They'll be like, no, we don't want you mixing with our Christian population. Get out. They'll kick out the Muslims. Spain was owned by Muslims in 1492. It tries to kick them out. And so the idea was there's going to be this thread, and this thread starts with Alexander's conquest of the Persian Empire. And for good or for ill, it's going to be a major topic in our 101 and 102 classes as we go along. All right, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed. That was energetic. Be safe, take care. Talk to you soon.